Okay, so thank you for joining. Today we will talk about the topic of mastering SAP monitoring. This is one that we are passionate about, and the idea here is that you can do it without the reliance on the SAP CCMS or Solution Manager. So this is a new webinar series that we've started, and like I say, anytime you have questions, you can feel free to type into the group chat there. So today, again, we are starting the first session of the Mastering SAP, and we'll talk about, the current state of the solution out there within SAP and the available ways that you can minimize the work to, do your own checklists. We'll go through this. Hopefully that resonates with the problems that's currently in the solution as far as managing SAP is concerned. How does IT-Conductor and Authiesoft work? We have been in the SAP business for 21 years, and we have a deep expertise in the consulting from a global standpoint of large SAP implementations. And so our expertise within the last 16 years has been passionately innovating in the system management space, particularly in monitoring, automation, and performance management. I have a long-standing relationship with SAP, both as innovators in the independent software solution as well as consulting solution. So today we'll touch on various different aspects of managing SAP, and SAP today has quite a few more areas that they cover in terms of applications and technology than they did 10 years ago when NetWeaver came out. So we'll talk about various aspects and why is it challenging to use all technology to monitor and manage SAP. We have a ongoing solution that's been around for 8 years today. Authiesoft Consulting is also a partner and a solution set that we've built as an on-premise platform using Microsoft System Center to monitor and manage SAP. That's an on-prem using a framework that's existing and is fairly popular now in large enterprises, and they use this as a framework, and we add multiple solution sets on top of that as a plugin to do the monitoring and management of various SAP, HANA, business objects, ASC, etc. It's a growing list of things that we can talk about how to monitor and manage SAP without the need for CCMS. Okay, so that's the on-prem stuff. IT-Conductor is really kind of a born-in-cloud solution. It's always web-based. We built it. It's been an idea that was 10 years ago at least, that we put in as far as to try and, from our field experience with the trouble of managing SAP environment, we've kind of built that over the time into a service-based solution that is SaaS hosted. And the idea is without the installation of complex software or licensing, we're able to have a subscription model that you can get online and start monitoring very quickly within an hour, almost of just set up without any investment or upfront licensing costs or even expertise. So the checklist, back to the checklist. Well, if you follow any of our blogs, the checklist, these things are fairly common. Now, this doesn't just apply to SAP. It can apply to anything that in the IT world, there's pretty much application and system management. You're always looking at things like workload and system logs, communications, etc., batch versus foreground, users versus background jobs. There's always some database technology involved and the intricate management of the RDBMS itself, and of course the operating system. So more and more these checklists are, there's one at every customer. There's probably 10 at every customer that we've seen, and the list is a ever-growing thing that you have to continue to check to make sure that you understand the health of your system. So that's kind of all fair and dandy, and we've even written about this and provided tips on what to look for when you're not monitoring. There's actually a blog on that topic. Again, this might look familiar for SAP folks, all these transactions, just to make sure you are able to understand where you are with the monitoring piece, the health of your environment, etc., etc. So yeah, this is very all common, and we have spreadsheets and we have many different things we keep track of. So what's the problem with this? And the problem here is that regardless of what technology you use and how big your environment is, becomes a manual process, right? As soon as you have checklists, they're a good start. Don't get me wrong, everybody needs a checklist to make sure for the environment they cater for the important things. Various different technology application or critical things. Yes, that's a good thing. Put together a checklist, but it is a manual process. It's a tedious and repetitive. Why it's repetitive? Because you can't just check it once. You got to check it regular enough to make use of it. And so it's not really something you schedule, you do. It's probably ad hoc when you have time, or even if you have somebody that's assigned, maybe a junior admin that's, learning the system, they're monitoring it. But after a while, they will end up missing things. Too many systems get added all the time. How do you do this in a grand scale? Even if you're managing an environment with 3 systems, development, QA, production, how do you keep up with them if you only have a couple of basis admins to manage and monitor this environment? So it becomes a reactive thing because you stop doing it. It's just too much work. It's tedious. So not only that, but each of the area you do check, it is without context. The data are like eyes without brains because you don't have context. So if you're pulling up buffer information or OS utilization, how do you know if it's 80% CPU utilization is good or bad? Maybe it's good because system is sized to be flexible and grow per demand, and maybe there's heavy workload. So does that mean bad? You don't know that, right? It's without the context. So it's without thinking, you're saying, no, it's crossed my threshold, so it must be bad. Not necessary. So that's kind of a checklist issue that, you have a checklist, you got to say, hey, it's too high, too low, but what does it mean? And of course, we know as soon as checklists are started and completed, it's already, stale because the data there, as soon as you, say it's okay, what if it flipped to not okay? What do you do with that checklist? That checklist is stale now. So it's not really a optimal way of managing dynamic environment, which for SAP, it's constantly changing, right? So if you encourage you to visit our blog there, we have written about the various different things to monitor, and it's a good one. A lot of people can resonate to areas, and you might add to your own list, but it is a good start, not so much a ongoing best practice, if you will. All right, so what is the fundamental problem? If the checklist doesn't work, what happens? What are the impact? What are the issues that can come up? So according to market trend research, track research, a couple of years ago, essentially the problem today in most enterprise environment is that organizations are losing on average $4.3 million per outage. And that's because 48% or almost half of them, they spend more than an hour per performance or issues or incident. And more than half of them really just struggle to solve those problems. And so the main struggle that we see in this enterprise environment is that number one, troubleshooting and performance issues in a timely manner. So it's not that you're not monitoring, you might be monitoring, but when there's an issue, can you get down to the root cause and look at why there's a problem? And then the other portion is to proactively manage that and prevent future performance issues or outages, availability problem. All right. So I think that's one of the key findings there. And so in the end, what does that mean for enterprises? It basically means downtime is a lot more than just productivity and revenue loss. So you have loss of customer, you have loss of confidence, and your partners, even employee morales are impacted, right? Those are intangible loss. So that's according to Forrester research. So if that's the problem, what leads us to the solution? Well, the real solution should be automation. And this is how something that we are passionate and in the industry now, there's a big movement in service management industry as far as automation is concerned. Because with the growing number of IT assets and the complexity, there is just no way to do that manually or with tools that are not really tied into a best practice methodology. So automation for the application service management, ASM in short, if you will, is a little bit different than just performance or availability. This is our 10 list of framework around application service management. When you have service management, you are essentially want to monitor availability and performance and everything else in between to make sure that it is a complete service delivered to end user to meet some service level objective. So we have again, another point to a blog that we wrote extensively about this. So I'll quickly go through this. First, it has to look 360 degree, not just one component. It has to be application environment, database environment, OS environment, etc. And we're not just looking at availability, because performance, although availability is important, but if performance is bad, it might as well be not available for some users if they're not able to run certain transactions or complete certain jobs within the amount of time. So it has to be more than availability, right? And then once you know the problem, what is the root cause analysis method? How do you help the system admin or the analyst to determine the root cause of the issue? So that's also a very important part. In our framework, we believe time-synchronized troubleshooting context is key to helping that root cause analysis. Because today, you have solution manager, you have CCMS, you have various different ways, and a lot of data are presented, but they're not really synchronized to some event, some trouble. So this time synchronization is key to doing correlation. And again, we've produced extensive content on what we think is relevant as far as time synchronized troubleshooting context, and we'll demonstrate this in today's session. And the service impact awareness. Service impact is obviously if something happens at the OS or DB level, does it mean it's bad, or nobody cares because it's not really impacting the service delivered to the end user? For instance, if the database, the buffer might be a little bit low in terms of hit ratio, but does that really impact, has it really impacted the overall performance for the particular transaction for customer? If it's not, then it isn't. But if something is impacting, that's what we want to be able to relate it back to the key service. So service management has to have that portion as well. Now, take it to the next step is automated admin scripts and jobs. So not just doing the monitoring piece, but can we automate something? We would say 30% of most system admin are doing repetitive things that they do on a regular basis. Run this job, check this, have a script do that. Let's take that away and make it automated. Can we have it so somewhere, even if it's just a simple library of things they can execute without having to go and hunt down scripts on various different servers? That's another part of the framework that is important in this methodology. And then once you have these automated admin scripts and jobs, we'll look at self-healing, right? Why don't you automate some of that? If some of those are to fix issues when you discover them, why can't you put them in as a self-healing automated recovery? Right? So that's the concept about automated scheduling of items that are handled as an exception when there's a threshold that's crossed. And then from there, number 6 and 7 fits nicely into 8 because these can be digitized into a complex IT process. So in organization, every company has their own IT process that they want to follow. So whether it be, run this job here, complete that over there, report back if it's successful, then kick off this and that. So examples go on and on. The ability to digitize that knowledge so that the operations or the sysadmin team can effectively transfer knowledge to new members or how they do operations. That's a process we see that's greatly missed in most of IT shops today. Okay. And then some advanced functions in synthetic transaction management. This we don't see a lot of customers do. And then we firmly believe that if you do have critical transactions and things that are being monitored, you need to be able to do synthetics in order to demonstrate that something is working and it's working against the system itself. Right? So that synthetic built into a framework is fairly powerful. And the last but not least, we always get questioned about reporting. We believe more in this dynamic service level management. Reporting is nice, something you send out an email or download a report. But a dynamic service level management will give you the ability to monitor and manage to a particular service level objective, so that you don't get a report at the end of the day, the month, or the week, say that you missed it. That doesn't help the overall system management quality. Yeah. All right, so all of that framework fits into this kind of capability best practices. If you are going to assess what you have today versus the gaps and what you want to look for, how to manage and monitor so that your checklist becomes something automated. Look for something. These are the 10 things. Again, we've written about this from a very high level down to very nitty-gritty comparison on some of the tools that are out there today. We have a blog that's how to select your SAP monitoring tools. It's based on these concepts. Again, how easy it is determines also the value of the solution of the tool, how much it costs. All right. So somebody might say, I use Solution Manager because it's free. Well, it's not really free. It's SAP's built into that support maintenance contract you get billed at every year. And then you have to implement and spend time to do that. So there's a cost of implementation and complexity. And then there are also things like what metrics can I get? What performance things can I do? Is it intelligent enough? Can I retrieve every so often? Can I retrieve only what I want? That sort of thing is important because there's no point getting 10 things and only 2 of them are useful for you, right? Also availability, obviously, if you monitor like we talked about, it has to be flexible. Your definition of uptime may be different than somebody else's definition of uptime for an application. And so that flexibility to define that service level and how we monitor that is important. And then from the monitoring standpoint, alerts and metrics. Of course, there's really thousands and thousands of alerts in SAP, metrics everywhere you can think of, multiplied by number of X servers. What do we do about this? How do we filter it down to something that is useful data? Okay, and not just pulling in and aggregating like Solution Manager today aggregates a lot of the data. So if you want that granular data, you have to go back to the source, which may or may not be there anymore. Yeah. And then from a notification, everybody gets flooded with alerts. Can we somehow make it more intelligent? Can we do subscription-based? Right? So that means I can subscribe as a user. I can subscribe for a group on behalf of a group and only get the level of data that I want. Meaning I don't want to get things that are at the low level. Maybe I'm the service manager. I don't want to see when the service degrades to the top level. So this kind of subscription base is quite important. And then recovery actions, as we talked about. Can we, do recovery action, not just monitor, do some recovery actions. 7, reporting. Some users may start here. Some of our customers say, I want reports. Well, yeah, okay. What do you want in reports? Reports are something that's going to evolve all the time. So it's important that the solution can deliver, can automate, can send you something, whatever you want, and it has to have that flexibility. Right? And then number 8, service monitoring. We talked about this. So a hierarchical with impact analysis that can report how's my service health, all right, and what are the things underneath of that? Why is it important? Okay, so process automation, again, all that jobs, monitoring, scripting, pulling into complex IT processes. And then do they come with some best practices templates? Solution Manager has some. I don't know if people have experience developing their own, but what we've done is try to put in areas where, if we're monitoring, standard NetWeaver ECC, we have, these are the things that we typically look for. If we're looking at a HANA environment, these are typical things we look for, Oracle, etc., etc. You see, templates are not one that fits all, but it generally covers, say, 70% of the scenarios, and then you can customize and add additional things that are important to your environment. Okay. So that's solution set comes to where we how do we do it? So in monitoring and can automation really take over what today is a tedious manual process of checklists and various point solution? Is to really automate the IT process and automation of the monitoring, the managing, and the optimization right? So what we would compare ourselves to is a smart IT for enterprise. So it's not just, you have a smartphone, might have a smart car, smart house, right? Why not a smart IT where you have the ability to proactively manage your assets, monitor them and proactive about it, and be flexible enough to adapt to ongoing changes in your IT environment. Okay. So let's take a tour. At this point, if there's any questions, I will unmute, or you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Otherwise, feel free to type into the chat. So if you open up the chat, you can type in. There'll be somebody answering questions as we go along. All right. So this is an IT-Conductor dashboard. So when we log in, when we get into a web-based service, this is subscription. You log in, we have default templates, you subscribe, you download a little connection proxy that basically tells us that, hey, you're connected to your site, and we can monitor your environment when you add systems to it. Okay, so let's take a look at what it means by when we say availability monitoring, for instance. Well, availability is, first of all, an alert base where if something crosses the threshold of what you would call availability, then it shows up here. If it crosses a performance threshold, it's also one that can be defined as availability. Now, as a dashboard, for a single glimpse, 360-degree view we talked about is one of our concepts. You have alerts, you have performance systems, you have metrics in various different operational alerts. Where do they belong to? You might have certain performance overview. So kind of a view of all of your environment. Maybe it's a SAP environment, you have database environment, you have OS environment. You have various different technology stack you want to monitor. So you're having a console that can bring up this type of view is important. Today, if you are using Solution Manager, for instance, we have a sample Solution Manager screen here. We've written a lot about Solution Manager, and it's a better step to what we have with CCMS yet. You can only have very limited view for a particular system, all right? And so in this case, you do have, a SAP HANA with a NetWeaver BW on top, for instance, in this particular case. But to get a global view where you do have a 360 of your complete landscape environment, you'd have to go switch at different levels to get that, right? So you'd have to go over to, say, Solution Manager and Work Center, go and drill down to various different systems that you may have. So part of what our strategy is to create something that you can pull together very quickly. You have various different dashboards, one maybe for the manager, one for the CIO, one for the basis team, one for DBAs, etc., that might provide you different level of information. And so this is role-based. It can be you logged in and you belong to a particular group, therefore you get a different dashboard, or by user base. So maybe really a technology management standpoint, basis manager might have different view than the basis people, and the DBA might have different view than individual database server manager, for instance. So that's kind of the concept. So we can flexibly build dashboards. It's all web-based. So that's a 360-degree view of the areas that you might be responsible for based on your responsibility and your role in the organization. So I want to go through, maybe take a look at ability and performance in a little bit more detail. So again, we are talking about two different sets of solutions. If you want on-premise, we do have what we call System Center, which is a Microsoft product. We build SAP on top of that, and SAP itself has multiple modules obviously managing SAP. So you can have similar things in availability management and performance type dashboard as well. So again, some of these will be deep dive topics we'll do at different sessions. Today, we're going to provide high level overview in techniques to help you monitor and manage without a checklist. So what am I showing you here? One is a SAP system dashboard. So the concept here we use is a grid base. So imagine this is SAP systems that basically was a drill down from this view. All right. So one tool provide views at different levels for different people of different interests, so that you're not going to compare 3 charts from 3 different tools when you meet and talk about performance or availability. So this concept here, in a single view, you have the ability to look at, for instance, I want to go in and look at availability. Well, availability there is 100% right now. So I can put up availability chart. What about performance, right? So if I want performance for all my online users, right? I have charts here for online users. I check off this one. So essentially, the ability for us to quickly get an overview with the impact analysis, all right? So availability and performance. So why is there a, for instance, this particular SAP system, you can expand the node and we'll show you what's relevant at that point in time and say, hey, looks like I have some yellow stuff. This is a HANA database belonging to this SAP NetWeaver environment. It looks like there's something yellow here, even though it's available, right? My HANA is available, right? There's some restart here. My NetWeaver is available, right? But looks like I have some yellow things. So this might be performance related. So I can continue to look at the impact by drilling down. So if I right mouse click on a particular component, it expands and expands. So I can say that for my database here, there's some services that are yellow. I can either click and just get a high overview. This is actually my my master server of HANA, and it's running the index server. Looks like I can further drill down. So with just another drill into that level, we'll be able to go down and look at the root cause. So here we have some physical memory that's in yellow alert. So again, I can click here, get a quick graph. Okay. Now, if I just pull this up and say that, hey, you know, there's some threshold yellow and red that I've actually put in here as override, that will quickly give me the idea of why there's an impact in here, right? So it crosses a certain memory threshold. So this concept of being able to look at availability and then the performance is important. For instance, I might go into another scenario here where our solution manager, we have performance that are for the web transactions. So if I go into web transactions, I go into HTTP, and I can see that I've got a red alert here. The idea of time synchronized troubleshooting context is one of the concept number 4 we put in there when we do root cause analysis. We have the ability to associate. So if you are a basis admin, you have experience to say that, hey, when I look at performance, I want to look at the 4, 3, or 5 things. Okay. For us, we collect the data, we time stamp them, we synchronize them, and the analytics is that just simply out of the box, we give you some context sensitives. You can also associate more things where your environment is relevant, right? So here I might say, what about dialog users? Can I look at my dialog users? Oh, I got some dialog users on here. I put it on the same timestamp, same time, so I can see whether there's any problem. Maybe their CPU has a problem. Okay, we can drill in, we can get CPU utilization, and so on and so forth. Maybe I can even look at something that may not even be on this system. Maybe this system feeds another system in your landscape. So like PI that might feed something else. We can cross-correlate, right? It's very hard to do this in Solution Manager or CCMS today because you can't relate things. We can put all the data that we have at our disposal. So I can say that users on totally another system, maybe ECC, is dependent on this system, how they're doing, do they have any alerts, etc. Okay, so that's high level to go into time synchronized information for root cause. We came in from some service and just saying, hey, you know, there's some alarm alert, something got yellow or red. Okay, now how do we go and say, give me more detail, right? So IT-Conductor is built on analytics that we can give you drill down. So what I just clicked on now is actually components of response time. So show me not only my overall workload of web transactions, but show me components. So in here, I've got some that I can see, hey, you know, this is guy is one of the work centers. So my solution managers ran for 35-second response time here, right? That's kind of give me more breakdown of what the components are of my response time. And if I really want to go into more detail, again, we can break down to specific transactions, or we can go into, let's say, I can go in and look at particular transaction only. This will give me a breakdown of their response time, database time, etc. Other components that you care about. Okay, and then even further, if I want to go in and say, give me the actual transactions. So this, now we've dive from like 30,000 feet down to like 5,000. We look at it, okay, these are component transactions that are making up this particular performance impact. All right, and this here is considered to be multidimensional analytics. So we can bring in and say, hey, you know, there's I ran a couple transactions this morning. They ran a long time. But what about app servers? What was happening? So anything here, you can switch dimension of analysis, right? And what I'm doing right now is I'm going, tell me what was happening on this app server at that time, in that period, that interval. So I'm pulling up historical snapshots of what my app server looks like. This looks like a process overview in SM50, right? So I can do this, and I can switch context of my analysis. Maybe I want to look at what are all the other transactions that I ran during this time, not just web. I can click on my name, I see it, all right? Or maybe I want to see what was top response times during this, right? So just from that, I get a different view, okay? Response time, sorted. What about memory? What about, you know, RFC now, or what different account? So from here, you can kind of switch your view. Maybe look at SE16, how many will run. So this is a quick overview of how we can do troubleshooting, go down to even transactional level, and we step back all the way from a high level. And this is another view. In fact, I have one here. So instead of the grid view, we also have kind of a tree view. Again, as you all know how tree views work, you can go in and you can click on something, it will show you a chart, etc. And we can have this dynamically refresh, right? So that will show you that in part of a different view on how you look at that. So that's kind of root cause from 30,000 feet down level. We have another topic. I think one of the sessions we have is health check, and we'll go into a lot more detail about that. For now, what I want to do is jump to one of the other framework topic, which is the automated admin scripts and jobs and auto healing and all that. So I have, let's take a look at, you know, we have a shortcut here to one of our HANA system. So as an example, this is one of the grid system that we look at. When we have before looked at how a service is impacting the overall health of the environment, we know that there's a physical memory alert here. So if I go into here and I say, well, there's obviously some threshold that got crossed here, I can actually dive in here and it will show you how we do you know, self-healing from automated admin scripts, right? So we can go in here and say, look, clearly there was some cross of thresholds. And what was done here, I can hover and it shows me there was an alert that it crossed the threshold. This annotation tells me that there was actually a recovery action that was implemented. And then following that recovery action, right, my memory did shrink down and I auto-close an alert sometime later. In fact, one of these, the triggering. So part of this is what we call recovery actions. Recovery actions are exception-based handling. Okay, and how do I look at that? As an example, I could look at all the recovery action launch for this particular managed component of the service. So this is telling me what are all the times that I've ran something against this. So if you know how to fix something by a script or run a command, etc., very easy for us to automate that and say, you know, do this when you have this condition. All right. So when we're doing this, it's generally bringing up hundreds and thousands of times that I've done this to keep this environment healthy because I don't have to do it manually anymore. So for instance, I could see in the past all these garbage collection that happens on the SAP HANA environment. the commands will run against the system to clean up this particular service, right? So we have essentially automated some of the functions, either it's housekeeping or whether it's functions that SAP doesn't do. It knows how to do it, it just doesn't do it intelligently, and we've done that to keep environments up and healthy and running. So that's based on automated admin scripts and jobs that can happen. Another area where that comes importance, in fact, I show you part of this digitized complex IT process in the service management is what we call my process. So I think I have one here for demonstration purposes. A couple of blocks that we wrote about is automating jobs and admins and scripts. For instance, this basis automation is one that we created, and it's a simple flow diagram that we have the ability in IT-Conductor to create. So you can use a web browser base, create a process flow, and you can automate that. And it's cross-platform. So you can do that as part of, let's say in this case, I just created something to show one application level. I'm running a basis job to do house cleaning. And then after that, I think I ran a report to see that, something's been done. And then after that, I, run an OS job. So this can happen in cross-platform, linked together, and are dependent and can be automated, right? So something like this, you can do, you set up, you can do it ad hoc, you can get hit here and you can do it ad hoc, all right? Or you can schedule it. And you can schedule it at a time, or you can schedule it as part of a automated recovery action, right? So the power here is that we're not just doing monitoring, we are going beyond that, right? So if you are a basis person doing a checklist and you see something happen, what do? Maybe I go run a report, do something, try to fix the issue, or just, report that issue to another group. And some of that can be automated, and that's what we're proposing here as the platform to do so when we do that, right? And then the whole service level type management piece is kind of where we tie back into when you have a environment where many things can happen that can impact the performance. The service level that we typically hear from customer today is they have something, I don't know, something like a 1 second response time, 2 second response time for my system, and it's going to be up X% at the time, yada yada. But how do you do that when you have something that's changing constantly, right? So if you're changing constantly, you're better off doing dynamic service level management. And what we mean by dynamic is like the health of your environment could be as simple as clicking something like this. And we have a dynamic analytics that run on all the data collected and collected with relationship to all the components, how they impact each other. If you have no idea what caused some of your issues, you can go in and look at from a service management standpoint, click on root cause of your health degradation, and that's what it's doing right now. It's going across all components that I'm collected data for, and it shows up. And here I can essentially bring all the concepts together that we have. We have time correlated data, we have root cause analysis, we have availability environment monitoring, we have performance monitoring. We bring it all in a synchronized and a meaningful way for you to be able to do dynamic service level management, because this is a service level, right? If I say I am saying health means this, and health means this KPI have to stay above something, and if it doesn't, show me the cause, right? And here's where we're able to do that. So we can say for this particular environment, I have a lot of alerts here, and all these are, by the way, they are clickable. You can click into it and dive in anytime. But for now, let me just further demonstrate by going in and say, where my service. So I know I had this from the other view, right? I have this problem with the memory. And so you can see this is where the impact is. So visually, I don't even need to know anything. I just know that, hey, I've got some issue underneath of that caused the overall service to be in some exception status. And so you can keep doing this. And you can do these for many different things that we collect. And so just the power of being able to visually collect this information helps the analyst tremendously in performance troubleshooting, availability troubleshooting. So from a systems management standpoint, this is kind of the, we call that the health management, dynamic service level health management. So I want to go back to kind of the dashboard and say, here's some top level things. We got service levels that talk about performance. Service level can be anything. Service level, for instance, this is one ECC environment. Okay, we have the ability to create service levels for even something that, for instance, if I get so many dumps per minute, or per 5 minutes, or per 10 minutes, in not only dumps, but maybe dumps that match a particular string. Maybe I have a particular dump that has a job that's quite important. Something like that is definitely something we can do. For instance, not just alerts, but I want to see if I have batch jobs that fail. I want to be able to go in and say quickly which job failed and when did they fail and what else were running at the time. All right, so we had jobs here that failed, and you can click on that, actually list the jobs that failed itself. So we want to be able to say what is the cause of the problem and what is the source of information that comes in. Right. So that's kind of high level what we're talking about, dynamic service level management. So I have so on May 4th, we're going to look into more the health of your SAP environment. So we have a service called Health Check, and we use our solution, our tools to do that. We can go through what does it mean in your environment, health, and then we can dive in a lot more detail in that respect. And other sessions, workload monitoring, batch processing, etc. Some of those areas I didn't go in today in the demo because there's just not enough time, but these areas we can take a look at. How do we monitor connections? How do we monitor some of the replication monitoring, spool, router, and various different components. Business object is one thing also that we've got a lot of requests for in terms of monitoring. It seems to be that it's an area that's fairly neglected in the monitoring space. So we have that, and we can get into native monitoring of HANA, or Oracle, and ASE, etc. But yeah, so we'll continue to update our events, and you can sign up for them. And every week we'll do that. So if you could please, visit our blog or provide us some feedback, that would be highly appreciated. And then some of those deeper dive sessions. So if you want to give a trial for this, just contact us or just get online and do a sign up. Essentially, you can sign up, subscribe, you connect to your environment, download the little proxy, and you can start creating systems, and it will insert the best practices templates and discover the environment, and you up and monitoring your environment and have the health analysis that will give you a good starting point for implementing your checklist. Okay, so you again can visit us. If you can follow us, that would be appreciated on either LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitter as well. And you can also, if you don't want to connect to your environment, we do have on our website a demo account that you can see a live environment that we monitor. And you can get an ID that you log in and you see, just like if you are a view-only sysadmin, so you can get that done. Well, if nobody has any questions, I could probably switch back and show some of the other areas if might whet your appetite for the sessions that are to come. We do have a little time here, so maybe we can do that. Let me see.
Hi, Lynn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, Lynn, hi. This is Salim. My question is on some of the third-party tools which most of the SAP environments have. Are those included as part of the setup for monitoring? I'm talking about Esker, Vertex, a lot of bolt-ons, faxing solutions, and so on.
Okay, good question. So we treat those, just as you do, treat them as interfaces, right? So for instance, one of the areas that how we monitor them today, make it easy for you, is that to look at them as bolt-on applications that interface with SAP either via RFC or so. For instance, not sure if let me just share this desktop and show you while I click away here. Yeah, so let me answer that by saying that we are flexible enough to monitor complete IT ecosystem. And that means if you have critical interfaces. So here I've gone into an RFC destination. And for us, we can do this without reliance on the CCMS. And we basically can say, hey, if my Vertex has an RFC connection, of course, I can go in here and say, how's that doing? We can monitor that on a regular basis based on the availability of that, as well as, say, instance, latency, availability of the interface. And if there are certain logs you want to pull from that, something that we're going to say here up front is that no monitoring platform is ever going to be 100% complete for every customer in terms of what they monitor. What we're saying that this is a community-based platform where the community tells us, hey, I have this. Is your platform flexible enough to cover this? Yes, we can. And why we offer it as a service is that we can absolutely provide a service where you simply tell us the requirement, and we'll just basically hook in the 5 KPIs or 10 that you have about certain things that you want to know, and we'll bring that in. And the beauty of that is when we bring it in for you, it's available as for all of the other things to do monitoring and analysis, right? So that's kind of the beauty of that. Now, so we can do RFC monitoring, connection, activity, SLT, and we add this as we try to follow the SAP technology stack as they roll out new things. Like SLT is fairly recently, for instance. When we look at the SLT monitoring, we're looking at the HANA. A lot of customers are doing live replication, and they're telling us that, they like to be able to monitor some of these critical tables or schema they're replicating, and if they have delays and etc. So yes, we absolutely look at the SAP as the core, but everything else around it as an ecosystem is important to your environment. We would love to work with it. And I think from my experience working 16 years in system management, a lot of platforms are not flexible enough to do that because it's a product, whereas we're delivering as a service. As a service, we can do almost anything that is practical and meaningful. Okay, so here, for instance, this environment, we have SLT monitoring, where we're monitoring a schema. Right? This is something that is not considered to be core SAP, but we can do it because we have the know-how and we have the flexible framework and all of this is primarily done using what we typically configuration in our IT-Conductor platform. Right? We can look at replication. Is it active? Is it not active? Is there latency, etc., etc. So the metrics we're exposing in a meaningful way, but we can collect a lot more information. And all of this happens most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, without any installation of anything.
Okay, thanks.
Great. I think Griffith had a interesting suggestion also. Look at some of the reporting capabilities. So reports are interesting. I can actually talk about this at great length. What we have, you can see, for instance, let me just go back to maybe one of our environment and say, if I was looking at, people say, I need this report, that report. Let's take a look at what some of these reports mean and how do I make use of it. So we'll take a look at, let's say I have some sample here in the HANA environment. We can implement reports at any level, either at the application, at the database, at the OS level. People who are basis are familiar with what SAP call MiniChecks. So when you complain SAP, you have some problems, they say, hey, run a bunch of MiniChecks and tell me what's wrong with your system. This is a demonstration of templates that we brought in from MiniChecks, for instance. This is HANA. Any of these reports here are something that we can schedule or we can do ad hoc, and these reports can be delivered. For instance, I look into my configuration overview, and this is one of the SAP reports that we've implemented, right? And this can be delivered ad hoc or scheduled every day. Show me my configuration of my system. Show me how big is my database today. Show me my, my size. Some of these, it's very tedious today. If you're anything to do with MiniChecks, they'll give you a zip of like 100, and you got to go and run them manually. Well, we can do it automatically. Why do it manually, right? So anything like this one, for instance, largest tables, very common. Give me my reports. I can get these reports every single day or every time, and it's basically can be delivered to your email as HTML, or we can PDF it or whatever. But this is how easy it is for us to do. So if a customer say, I have 10 things I want reported on a daily basis, wow, then it's just a matter for us to pull these together as what we call the process, right? The process will be very easy to say, define what you want, and then we'll just group them together and schedule them on a regular basis and define who will get these reports and when they get it and how they will get it, via the email or download online, etc. So we do this even for Oracle. For instance, Oracle is infamous for having so many performance. So now we have native Oracle monitoring, let's say. So in native Oracle monitoring, we can run any SQL on the database and give you the report you want. So, for instance, Oracle here, we could have, in fact, I think we have already implemented a bunch, but you can look at the list of available reports that today we have available. Let me see, bring up here. There's probably a list 30, 40 Oracle reports. And, so many, right? But we can automate all of this, or you can run it ad hoc. And that's really the beauty here, is that, a lot of these can be done ad hoc, and look at, reports that will run, look at all of the alert log messages over the last day, for instance, these things. So this doesn't just mean static report. It could be a graph, a chart, performance KPI, etc. So there's a kind of almost endless limits to how we can implement this and deliver that in a meaningful way. But again, it go beyond that. So for instance, customer want performance, like, top sessions. This I can go in here and really click away and say, show me what were my top things at 30-minute interval throughout the day, and maybe even show me what we're actually running, right? This is actual SQL wait time by top SQL wait times in the system, and we can go in there, and we even have ability to look at explain SQL against certain statements, etc. So it's comprehensive. We get very this one we didn't have explained, but we can also look at the actual sessions that we're running at a time, how many, what client, what program we're running. So again, this imagine as a cloud-based service delivered to you without installation. So we can connect this, we can monitor hundreds of systems, we can do it in a meaningful way where you get less noise and you subscribe to only what you want, and then various users will get dashboards for what they need based on what you want to expose to your user. Again, I encourage you to sign up for additional sessions if you find this helpful, and then also be able to provide us some feedback. You want to see some specific topics. I'd love to be able to do more interactive sessions when we do the deep dive sessions, because everybody who is experienced in these areas tend to have, hey, what about this, what about that, and we can do many of the things that you mentioned. It's just there's just so much to get into in terms of system management and performance and availability and everything else that has to do with maintaining environments. And none of us have the time to do that. That's why we created this years ago, because as a basis guy, I do not want to do things manually. I've got too many things going on. So that's kind of my passion and automation here. And the platform now lets me do that and be able to do that very efficiently. Thank you.